and welcome to the Heart of Leadership with yours truly, Madre Burkle. And today with me is the legendary Chris Engel. Welder by trade, turned into an entrepreneur, an experienced operational and project manager leader, adept at driving exceptional results in executive settings through team building and strategic leadership. He's skilled in navigating fast-paced, detail-oriented industries to deliver successful projects by leveraging collaboration and industry expertise. He's got expertise in maximizing profitability, operational efficiency, team development, safety compliance, and stakeholder engagement, and that's a mouthful. Welcome, Chris. I'm so glad you could join me for a conversation about people-centered leadership, something that is so important to us in this world we're living in today. So I'm going to jump in with that big question. You had that pivotal moments in your career where you realized that leadership is not a top-down dictatorship thing. You have to do it differently. Please share your story with us.
Well, thank you very much for the introduction. Like you said, I was a welder by trade and started working on the tools at a young age. Became a journeyman at the age of 19 and worked for very many different types of leaders, especially being in the oil and gas industry. A lot of the leaders were a very old school mentality. So you could say it was very tough to work for them. It was a hard knock life, I guess you could say. And it was something that we were just used to, and it was, you could take the abuse if you wanted to keep working, and you just did what you were told. And as time went on, people changed, societies changed, the trades have definitely changed. Less people have been going into the trades, more people have been pushed away from it, for one of it being kind of a hard knock life of a career, being away from home, sacrificing a lot of different things to become successful in the trades. I worked for a business for about 10 years, learned a lot, not just only on the tools, but also went into management at a young age at 23 years old. At the age of 27, I did have about 1,000 people underneath me on large scale oil and gas turnaround projects. The person that I did work for was a very, very successful man, but once again, kind of ruled with a iron fist, very old school, kind of a my way or the highway. Wasn't open to different people's opinions. And as time went on, we built a very good relationship, and I learned a lot. And I also learned a lot, especially not how to treat people. As time went on, we were supposed to become partners. And a long story short, that went a different route. So I decided at the age of 29 in 2018 to start Canico Energy. Now, starting Canico Energy, I started on my own for the first 3 years. Everything was completed on myself. And I started to build a business that was quite a bit smaller. We're quite a bit larger to this date now. With our growth trajectory was unbelievable to myself and most people around us. But I think one of that biggest growth things was because we decided to build a culture, a family business, and started looking at industry differently. I do believe oil and gas is very behind the times in how to lead people, how to actually pay attention to people's opinion, or even taking a different route and learning new successful traits from other parts of the industry, not even just oil and gas, but how there's a lot of different businesses that have grown immensely with mental health, how to challenge people, how to actually bring a team together, and honestly be open to other people's opinion. I find, especially when you become a business owner, the business is your baby and you're set in your ways and you think it's being successful, but I find you kind of get stalemate when you are just a tunnel vision of one train thought. And I see that in multiple of our competitors. I see that in some of the people that work for us, that they're locked in this tunnel vision and won't take a step back and really, in simple terms, put their ego aside and listen to other people's opinions on how we could do better. And the big thing is I don't think as a company grows, they lose the fact of a culture. They lose the fact of, hey, we're trying to continue building a family business. And as they get bigger, they start, losing sight of the little things. And this is a very simple terminology, but one thing I always put, don't sweat the small things, sweat everything. Because at the end of the day, the small things add up, and those small things is, hey, if someone does have a problem, it takes 2 minutes to sit down and actually listen to what they say, and everyone has a different outlook on life. It might not be the same way that you would do things, but as long as the outcome's the same, and at the same time, if your employees feel welcomed and with no fear coming to you with no new ideas, they're not only buying into the culture, you're also buying into what you're selling and actually leading and not being a boss. So when I started my own business, I learned how not to run a company. I learned how not to treat people. And I decided I was going to change that, because at the end of the day, without the people beneath us, what does a leader have to lead? Um, and even that, with the ongoing lack of labor in our trade, the lack of management, because not many people are going in there, how do you empower people to actually want to become a leader? And as a leader, if you stop growing, you're not a leader anymore. You turn into that boss mentality. You're not side by side. You're not equal rights with the people that you work with, and you start screaming and yelling instead of coaching. So we, I've really put a lot of effort into training our people, training myself constantly to actually improve how I can speak to people, how you can open your arms to people and have that open door policy, because I have realized as time goes on, society's changing. There's more access to information, there's more access to training, that people are now starting to think a lot more critical, and they're starting to think outside the box, because I also find the leadership world is very competitive. And how do you become that leader if you're not growing yourself? And if you're not growing your employees or the people around you, you won't be growing yourself. So we really, really pushed to treat people fairly, listen to people, and change with the times. Like we are still an old school company at heart, hardworking. We'll put our hours in. We'll make sure that our customers are getting everything they need. But we're bringing a new school twist to it that, for us, like mental health is a huge thing. Starting to talk to people, trying to grow your own mind, learn to love yourself, learn to empower yourself. Because if you don't love yourself, you don't empower yourself. How do you do that for people underneath you? So that's one big thing I've pushed to my whole executive team, is to really push the therapy, really push the working on yourself. Because if we can't lead yourself, how can you lead other people? And that's kind of the journey we're on.
Love that you said you cannot lead yourself. You can't lead anything. And I mean, leading yourself is probably one of the most difficult things a leader has to learn to do, because it's so easy to spin yourself a story or not hold yourself accountable and just live focused on everybody around you. And rather than just, I've got to bring the best version of myself to work. How do you manage to bring the best version of yourself to work every day?
I think the biggest thing is, I always say, and this is not even in just business, but also in personal life, is words are words and actions are actions. If you don't lead by example, then there's no point of even opening your mouth. Excuse the simple language, but it's, if you're going to preach to the choir, sing with the crier. And we've we set things in place, and I'm no different than anyone from a first year apprentice to my CEO. We all follow the same rules and we all act the same, because we're a team. We're a uniform team. And if one of us goes out and does something different, the team falls apart. If our shields aren't interlocked, we're not protected. And if there's one weak unit, then the whole team fails. So I think for myself, it's, when I get ready for the day and plan the days out, if I'm telling or coaching my people to do something, I make sure I'm doing the exact same thing. For one, if they have an issue and I've already completed the task, I can either help them coach them or help challenge them to do better. And if I don't do it, how can I really hold anyone in our team responsible if the main people aren't following through with what they're saying? And I find that in a lot of businesses, that the management team will say one thing and do the complete opposite, and then there'll be punishment for the team if they did that, and it turns into a finger pointing game. And when I think a lot of people shy away from becoming a leader because it's a huge responsibility. You don't really make extra money, you don't really do this. It's a sacrifice in life, because you want to grow yourself and grow people around you. And I honestly think that's the hardest part of being a leader, is at the end of the day, you have to go to bed saying, okay, I could change someone's life for the good better, or I can change it for the worse from my actions. And if you're only speaking on words and not delivering your actions, you have to expect the same from your people, because they can do the same to you. And if we have no one to lead, we don't have a job.
Mhm.
So that's kind of where I'm at.
Wow, yes. That differential power of leadership is so important. So many people don't really really completely grasp it, that it's the lift of an eyebrow or a sideways look or just the tone in your voice speaks volumes and people interpret it with exponential levels of meaning. So your every single interaction with a team member sends massive messages to that person, and it can either build or destroy. How do you manage that dynamic? Because the oil and gas industry is generally known for being a little bit gruff by nature.
And I would agree for sure, but I think the biggest advantage to actually paying attention to who you are and truly loving yourself, figuring out yourself, is that you pay attention in the room. And I've always said that energy is a very important thing, and you can read people's energy if you pay attention. You can, if you sharpen your skills to actually look at someone's body language or sense the room and feel the room, instead of just going in there guns ablazing, actually take a step back, talk calmly, let people talk, listen, feel their body language, feel their energy, because at the end of the day, every person in the world needs something to be motivated, but it's something different. And if you're not paying attention to what actually triggers them, you're going to fail as a leader. Like, as simple terms, some people need to be pushed very hard and not be yelled at, but be like really pushed. Some people need the affirmation of, hey, that was a great job, you're doing a great thing. So you really have to, if you want to be a successful leader, in my opinion, you really have to look at your team and see what makes them tick. Because if you don't pay attention to that, you could be in a we have many times in business where people are having personal issues, and you have an open door policy, and they come and speak on it. And if you don't pay attention to what's going on in their life, there could be something that could trigger them in a meeting that would throw them totally off character, because they could have had trauma, they could have done whatever. And this comes back into actually learning about yourself with therapy, that everyone does have their own trauma, and it's trauma we cannot fix. They have to fix it on their own, but there are trigger points. So if you don't pay attention to that, one of your best leaders in your team could go off the rails because you triggered them because of something that's happening in their personal life. And if you don't read the energy in the room and really pay attention to their body language, if you make them uncomfortable, you can retract that statement and say, hey, I'm sorry, I put that wrong. And that's one thing I think that's wrong with the oil and gas industry, because it's just everyone gets in there, attacks, it's finger pointing, and nothing ever really gets solved. This is just spinning your tires. When you could take 3 minutes to step back, let them speak first, actually pay attention, talk quieter so they can, so they pay attention and listen, because you're speaking quieter, you're not speaking like aggressive, and you're not putting someone on the defense. And I think that's the biggest problem is, especially, once again, excuse my simple language, but in an egotistical world of oil and gas, it's extremely ego driven, and it turns into a big competition and nothing gets done. And in my opinion, that's not leading.
Not really. I've got to grab my charger. Give me a second, please. Oops. So on your website, your company has a culture statement, and you don't often see that in companies. I think that's super cool. And your culture says that the founders and principal leaders of Canaco are aligned to ensure we follow and deliver exemplary results through a we care and we control the environment statement. Can you tell me more about we care and we control the environment?
So one of my mentors long ago, his name was Kevin Cadu. I worked underneath him at CNRL, Canadian Natural. And when I was building my business, he said one of the sayings you should put into your business is what good looks like, which goes back to the we care and that we have a positive attitude of pushing and making sure our clients, our employees, they're not hiring us. They want to hire us. They want to work for us. They want to be a part of our team. And that what good looks like statement goes back to our culture, is to hold our people accountable. I don't believe in, punishing people or firing people for making mistakes, because at the end of the day, a lesson learned is a lesson learned. So if something goes wrong, and especially my management team and my business partners, if something goes wrong, the first question we always ask the team, we don't single out one person, is, guys, is this what good looks like?
I love
And
it.
most people kind of just sit there in the room and kind of stare around. It's like, when you were hired on, you knew we had a culture. We knew that we wanted to be the best we can. And we're also a company that if we get offered a job that we personally know we can't either man or can't handle, we'll be the first ones to say no because we don't want to damage our name just to get revenue. So that biggest thing of the culture is everywhere you go, every truck we have, it says, what does good look like? And it's a constant reminder of, not even in business, but in personal life. Wake up in the morning, make your bed. That's what good looks like. You started your day fresh. And if you had a bad day, you go home into a freshly made bed. That's what good looks like. In our office, we make sure everyone's dressed very nice because it's what good looks like. We don't know who we're going to meet in the day when we want to dress to impress. So we try to keep that culture fully going. So all of our clients see, hey, they're always constantly thinking, how can they do better? And what is the standard of what good looks like? And our standard, in my opinion, is extremely high. And our team and my management team and my partners are very supportive of it. And we constantly remind each other. So there's no hierarchy of who's the boss or who's this. We're all challenging each other. We're all constantly saying, hey, was that what good looks like? I think we can do better. How do we do better?
Yeah. So is this what good looks like, expand into your interactions and into your interpersonal relationships at Canaco?
100% it does.
Okay.
Because we want, I personally think it doesn't, unless if you're very good at separating your personal and business life. I think you all come together, especially in an executive role, a management role, a
Mm.
partner's role. Whoever can teach me how to shut my brain off at night from not thinking about work, I'd enroll in that class tomorrow. So I think if we're constantly living that life personally, then we should be doing it at work.
Mhm.
And we've even challenged, it's like, if we treating our people good at work, you're going to be treating your wife or husband good at home. There's going to be issues. It's like, if we can sit back as adults, and if there is a problem in a job, when we sit back and have a proper meeting, each person has their time to talk, you take your time to listen, then why can't we carry that home? Because if we're doing it in both,
Yeah.
then you'll be successful. And we also like to keep the company tight. So we do have family barbecues, and we do involve our families in the business. Like, for example, right now, my father works for me. He came out of retirement and he's now working in a tool crib just because he wanted to do something to do. And now he's learning our culture and seeing the business we've built. And he's quite impressed because he's never really been involved in it. So if we can continue to push our people to do well in their personal lives, grow in their personal lives, it's just second nature to grow in your career, especially if it's in a safe and comfortable place. And if the people around us know that there is room for growth and opportunity, then we're willing to actually put time and effort to making them grow. Who wouldn't want to do that?
So thank you for segueing into growth and development. In our first conversation, I was blown away with what you invest and what you commit to for your whole company in terms of growth and development. Can you tell us more about that?
But it starts at all different levels. Like, I have two partners in the business that have worked for me we've worked together for 10 years, not just technically worked for me. And they both bought into the business. And it was something I was going other businesses, and it never came in. And so one of the things on the executive side of things is, the first thing we did is we made sure paperwork was signed and that they were actually, in simple terms, have skin in the game, that they're okay, we're in, we have a percentage, this is actually part of ours, so I'm going to help grow this. Once again, my mentors developed a training program for our managers that is specifically to the types of jobs we do and specifically to our style of leading. And we want to constantly push for that. Like, our HR lady, she gets $8,000 a year in funding for any type of classes or anything to improve her communication skills, indigenous relationships, working with women in the workplace. So we want to make sure that the people that want to stay with us, we will invest with them. And the thing is too, is we're not just pushing lower level staff to do it. We're all doing it as a team. I have a business coach, very, very successful business coach who I meet with once a month. For Christmas, I got my partners 10 sessions with him, and they've done really well. And we've also brought him in. He's from Australia, but we've brought him into our office and have done team building for full 4 days to really find out, how to do the critical thinking. What type of personalities do we have? How do you work with these personalities? Not so much of, hey, oil and gas, but so much, how do we communicate? How do we push each other? How do we get to read your energy? How do I know that, okay, you're a critical thinker or you're a dreamer? Which way do I go? How do I approach this conversation to make sure that you're intrigued? So we were really pushing that. And as we grow, we're trying to get more and more. Like my next goal in life is to be a business coach. I don't think I have enough personal experience in business yet. But so what we're trying to do is we're trying to develop a lot of in-house management training that we know that is kind of geared towards our clients and how to deal with our clients. So, and it's also a skill that if someone decides to leave the business, they're leaving with something. So we want to always keep relationships. We don't want to try to trap people. We don't want to train people and have them in an unhappy place when they leave. We want to build that relationship. We want to train them so if they do move on, we can still have a relationship, and maybe they move to on the client side where we could have a chance of getting new work with them. And really, the biggest thing is when they leave the company, they're saying, "Hey, I actually learned something from them," and I will always recommend them. They can always leave on a positive note is one thing we're really pushing for.
That is excellent. So, with this culture of putting people first, doing a people-centered leadership style right throughout the organization, would you say your culture is a competitive advantage for you, and how?
Sorry, you cut out there.
Would you say that your culture, your company culture, is a competitive advantage?
I would say so, yes, but it goes back into I think it's a competitive advantage for attracting the right people to come work for us. Dealing with our clients, they don't see that much. At the end of the day, it turns down to safety, quality, and price. But we try to all look the same when we go to meetings. We do have brochures that talks about our culture and says our slogans. We try to pitch that to our clients. I think the best competitive edge is that and compared to our competitors that are much bigger than us because we're kind of playing in a ring that we're the small dogs for sure. But it's bringing that we're starting to get a very good name around the people around us. Like, hey, you got to go work for these guys. Like we're a big thing. Like for swag, for example, like company hats and shirts. Clients will ask for it, but we'll like, well, if there's any left after we give them to our employees, then you guys are more than welcome to have them. And they're like, well, we're the client. It's like, okay, well, no, once our guys have it and there's some left, you guys can have it.
Yeah.
We're not trying to be here, the client told you're giving us work. It's at the end of the day, without our employees, our workers, our tradesmen and tradeswomen, we'll never be able to complete the job. So really at the end of the day, they're the motor, they're the engine. And if the engine's not fed, we're not moving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. So your culture then helps you to easily attract. So you're not really suffering in this labor market at the moment. People are lining up.
It's been pretty good. We've had very good success. We've had a lot of repeat. Um, a lot of guys have come back. It is still a tough market because there's a lot of work going on, and it is turning into a battle of who pays more. But there, a lot of, I would say 70% of the people that work for us come back because they like who they work with, they like the culture, they like how we run business. There's obviously going to be people that aren't happy. That's in any business. But the majority of the people that have stuck with us since we started 6 years ago has been unbelievable. I could go back and the amount of names that we've had repeat on jobs and have come back and have even left jobs just to come work for us, even for a lesser wage, because they know they like the way we do business. They like our superintendents. They like the executive team. So we don't want to lose that because at the end of the day, I think really soon it's going to just be a turn into a battle of who can get the manpower to complete the project. And you can only pay so much. And then so it's really what's the bonus on the other side? Is there what do you get out of it to make sure they're happy and feel comfortable and even job security?
Yeah, all those things are so incredibly important, but working for a culture that has meaning and adding meaning to the work environment is becoming so increasingly more important. And it is cool that you've seen that people will come back to you because it's a great place to work, even at lesser pay, because if you're happy at work, it just makes life so much easier generally. I mean, I've seen stats that people will take up to about a 30% pay cut to work for a company with a better culture or to work for leadership that they can actually believe in and want to work with. So that is
Right.
cool. So as we're pushing towards the end of our 30 minutes here, I have a few questions for you still. What advice would you give a leader who aspires to become a people-centered leader?
Well, I think the biggest advice is in like for me, like I've been in therapy myself for 4 years, and the main reason why I went into therapy was because I had an open door policy, and I would hear about a lot of the issues that people that were working for me and conflict of interest. You couldn't speak on it, so I ended up going to therapy to talk about that. So I honestly think the biggest thing is to learn how to love yourself and learn who you are before you actually decide to lead people. Because when I went to therapy, it turned into, yeah, it was a little bit of work, but then it turned out learning about myself, how I react, what triggers me. Sometimes my tone's off, and a tone can be intimidating, and how do you dial that back? And that was a really big thing. Is some of the guys I worked for said you're very intimidating, you're very aggressive, and then I learned, okay, people read my body language a little bit different, so how do I change just to be more inviting, or a little bit more calmer energy? And I honestly think if you can't face yourself in the mirror, how are you going to face 30 people that are underneath you? And how do you expect them to listen to you if you're not even listening to yourself?
Yeah, yeah,
So
great.
I'm a big fan of mental health now. I used to be very, very against it until I got into it myself, and it's definitely changed my life. It's changed people's lives around me, and I think that'd be the biggest thing for a leader is to make sure that you work on yourself before you expect results from somebody else.
Yeah. Here's an adage, could be a moderate quote, but it's like your business will never outgrow you, and you will always be the glass ceiling. And as long as you keep on growing as a whole person, so mental health, leadership skills, personal skills, professional skills, all of that, then the business will keep on growing alongside
Well,
you.
I think the biggest thing is just like in a personal relationship is communication is key.
Yes.
Don't bottle things up. If there's an issue, be an adult, come with the issue, and not just come with an issue, come with a solution. And that solution might not be like, not even close to the correct way that your leader would do it. But at the same time, if it turns out to the same outcome, it doesn't really matter what happens in the middle. And it also empowers that one person. It's like, hey, my leader took my idea and helped me build it, and I got the credit for it. And that's the thing, is giving people information and communicating with people. At sometimes a 5-minute conversation can save a job.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. That's great. So love yourself, pay attention to communication. Any other advice for aspiring people-centered leaders?
I'm really bad at this, but I think if I was giving to advice is don't forget about work and life balance.
Oh,
I think that's a really big one, because if you are suffering and sacrificing your personal life, you'll never be 100% in your work life.
mm,
Myself chose work over everything as starting a business, and I also have a few other businesses that I've started, and that was my mission. And now that's changing, but I think a big thing for a leader is if you need to be you need to have the strong shoulders. So if you're having problems because you're not balancing in your personal life, your team will pick up on it. They'll know your energy's off. They'll feel that you're not right, or you're a little bit short, or a little bit more tempered. And if you have a long enough team, they can pick up on it. And if you're the leader, your energy will affect everyone else's energy, and it will just tumble from downhill.
excellent. Yes, manage your energy.
Yeah.
That's a very important part of leadership. 100%. And then my final question for you is, what books or podcasts are you currently paying attention to as you are growing as a leader?
There's I podcasts. I do mostly audiobooks. I haven't gotten really hard into podcasts yet. Right now I'm reading an old book called Frogs to Princes. And it's a book all about mental health, how to read body language, paying attention to the directions of people's eyes if they're telling the truth. It's all about really learning the human body when it comes to negotiating in business. And it's not to be used as a weapon, but it's to use to be, to more so even defend yourself. If you're going into a room for a meeting and you're with weak other leaders, there's things you can pick up and can use it to your advantage in a positive way. It's not malicious or anything. I could probably say one of my favorite books is the 48 Laws of Power. Lots of history, lots of different things you can learn in that book. I've read it a few times.
Mhm.
So, but the biggest thing is I like with my network and my executive team, me and my two other owners, we have meetings once a week, and it's not an update meeting; it's a brainstorm meeting. I like you said, if you're not growing, the business dies. And I said, yes, my title is a CEO. None of us in our business really care about titles. We're all the same in our opinion. But my dream is to be a CVO, and I think the term CEO is very loose because at the end of the day, I went from an operations to a CEO, and really, in my opinion, the job of the CEO is to keep the vision alive. So if I could change my title, it would be a CVO, the Chief Visionary Officer, because if the vision dies, the business dies. So,
Oh, I love that. The CVO, Chief Vision Officer. Yes, that is really cool. What stuck out for you with 38 Laws of Power? What is the one thing that you carry with you from that book?
I think with the 48 laws of power is that each law they relate it to a historical event, from ancient times to Egyptian times to medieval times, and it really shows how the law could be malicious or how it could be positive or how you can use it in modern day life. It's just like, I think a lot of people have read the book The Art of War, but there is a copy of the book The Art of War, and it's turned into modern day language for the use of managers. So and it's a very, very good book because they take the quotes from The Art of War and they turn it into modern day language and how you can actually use it in business and your career. Because if you've ever read the book, The Art of War is really nothing about war and all about peace and how to do it correctly. And this book will explain it in modern language, how you can really use what he did, avoid war and make peace, and things will go better. So that's another very good one.
Oh, yeah, I love that book. It's
Yeah.
one of the books I do pay attention to at least once a year. It's really good, but I didn't know that they translated it into
Yes.
one language. I will definitely go and look for that. It is very useful
Yeah, it's called The Art of War for Managers.
for managers. That's so
Yeah.
cool. Thank you. Well, Chris, thank you very, very much for your time and all the wisdom that you have shared with us. I'm sure our audience will benefit hugely from your insights. And if they need to contact you, they can find you on caneco.com.ca
Yeah, or LinkedIn. Yeah.
or on LinkedIn if they want to ask you more questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the time.
With that, it's a wrap.